Chapter 2198. Chapter 2198, Untitled. If he didn't say anything, maybe he would still have a chance of getting the seed when the fighting was over. But if he told his teammate, "Lower your weapon," the level 5 spiritual lord stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu rose to her feet and smiled at him. Just then she heard another person approaching. She paled slightly. One level 5 spiritual lord didn't scare her, because she could easily take care of him. But if he had help, she couldn't take the risk. What happened next was quicker than words could describe. When she heard the approaching footsteps, she quickly hid behind the level 4 spiritual lord. Meanwhile, the level 5 spiritual lord took action as well. He started shooting with the crossbow in his right hand. Whoosh! Luckily, Feng Wu had reacted in time and could use the level 4 man as her shield. Therefore, the level 4 spiritual lord screamed in pain. His level 5 teammate was furious. He had never expected that the girl could be so bold. She had used one of them as her shield. "Stop," he bellowed. Of course, Feng Wu wouldn't listen to him. She had already run out of sight. Two people joined the level 5 spiritual lord. The Zhou family was indeed an influential force. They had more spiritual lords than one could count. The two newcomers were both level 6 spiritual lords. "What's going on?" the two men asked. One of them had a round face, and the other one had long arms. Both their faces were covered with scarves. Feng Wu escaped. The level 5 man narrowed his eyes. She made some rapid progress, and is already a level 4 spiritual lord. "Is that so?" Round Face narrowed his eyes as well. "Weren't we told that she was only a level 7 spiritual elder?" Long Arms frowned. "Does that mean that Miss Qingwan's information is true?" One piece of information that Zhou Qingwan had sent back was that Feng Wu probably had the seed of the spirit source. If that was the case, they had to kill her and take the seed. Round Face said coldly, "I see that the girl has quite a few nice things on her." Long Arms said, "Let's catch her before she's done with her breakthroughs and fetch the seed. Otherwise, by the time she's done, the seed will become useless. If Miss Qingwan has the seed, she'll make major progress again. That'll be great news for the Zhou family," said Round Face. "Our family seems to have become entangled with ill fortune, and the young members keep dying." His two teammates fell silent. He was right. Although the Zhou family was rather large, there weren't many outstanding members in the younger generation. Zhou Ming's children were the most talented ones. But he had lost 2 sons and a daughter already. Therefore, Zhou Qingwan was basically their only hope now. "We'll thrive if the Zhou family does. And if they fall, so will we." Round Face waved his hand and said, "No more delay. We must kill Feng Wu today. Gather everyone and catch her." Chapter 2199. Chapter 2199, Untitled. Feng Wu had been making such rapid progress that it alarmed them. But what made them more nervous was that if Feng Wu used up all the energy in the seed for her advancement, there would be nothing left for Zhou Qingwan. Whoosh! A unique whistling sound rang out in the silent woods. Instantly, several people ran in the direction of the sound. The men of the Zhou family weren't the only ones who heard it. Little Phoenix heard it as well. "They've sent the signal, and they're gathering the team." The bird spoke fast when it was nervous. "There are 7 of them in total, and the spiritual king is being stalled by the white fairy." It ran a quick analysis for Feng Wu. "You've killed 3 spiritual lords already, so they should only have 3 people left." Feng Wu shook her head. "There's more." Little Phoenix nodded. "That's very cunning of them. They seem to have sent 7 men, but there are actually many more of them. How many assassins are after you? I see that they're really determined to kill you. What did you do to make them hate you so much?" Feng Wu said, "Zhou Ming has lost 2 sons and a daughter directly or indirectly because of me. I bet the rage has driven him crazy. I'm impressed that he still acts like a sane person." Little Phoenix said, "I think they've found out that you have the seed of the spirit source." Feng Wu nodded. "They probably didn't know at first, which was why they weren't in a hurry to kill me in the beginning. Now that they've confirmed it, however, they've picked up their pace." Little Phoenix looked at her in resignation. How could she sound so relaxed when she was being hunted? Aren't you afraid at all? Little Phoenix was speechless. They're all after you. And they're all more capable than you are. Feng Wu shrugged. This won't go away just because I'm scared. Get up there and see how Jun Linyuan is doing. She was confident in what she was doing, partly because of the seed that Jun Linyuan had refined, and partly because of the bird. It could fly and see a lot of things from up in the sky. Little Phoenix knew how serious the situation was, so it flew up into the sky without hesitation. It then told Feng Wu, "The Crown Prince is as capable as he's said to be. It took him less than 3 minutes to defeat his enemies, and he's coming for you." Feng Wu checked the log for the 10th trial. As expected, the number of deaths had grown. Feng Wu said, "Lead me to him." Jun Linyuan was her only hope now. Little Phoenix nodded. Not only could it lead Feng Wu to Jun Linyuan, it could also help Feng Wu avoid the assassins. Little Phoenix said, "The Crown Prince is coming from the southeast." Feng Wu was about to head in that direction when the bird stopped her. "No. If you go that way, 3 level 6 spiritual lords will be on you in 3 seconds. She then turned to the right, but the bird stopped her again. "No. The spiritual king has shaken off the white fairy and is coming from that direction." Chapter 2200 Bottom of Mirror Lake. Chapter 2200 Bottom of Mirror Lake. Feng Wu said, "Then there's only one direction left." Little Phoenix looked in that direction and cried out, "Don't." Feng Wu said, "What?" The bird said, "There's a magical beast too powerful for you to handle in that direction." Feng Wu asked, "Then what should I do now?" The bird fell silent. Since all 4 directions were out of the question, her only option now was, "I need to find a place to hide and stall them for as long as I can. You go tell Jun Linyuan." Feng Wu made the decision. All right. Although the bird was worried about Feng Wu, it knew that this was the best option. The next second, it flew away like a bolt of lightning. 3 minutes. That was all she needed. Feng Wu encouraged herself. 3 minutes and Jun Linyuan would be here. She only needed to stall for a little while. She looked around. She was in the heart of the woods, and a lake glistened in the moonlight. The water was very calm, but she didn't know what it was like underneath. She dipped her fingers into the lake. It was very cold, but she didn't have time to think. It wasn't easy to pass 3 minutes. Just then she heard rustling. The 4 spiritual lords were coming. Feng Wu swiftly dove into the lake. She quickly sank to the bottom and sat there with her legs crossed. She then closed her eyes and held her breath. She even slowed down her heartbeat. She sealed off all her senses. Only then could she minimize the chance of being discovered. Whoosh! 4 men rushed to the lake. Her aura disappeared here. The spiritual lord with the crossbow looked perplexed. There were 3 level 6 spiritual lords and 1 level 5. "Are you sure?" Round Face asked with a frown. "Yes, the bowman was very certain. My arrows have poisonous powder on them. Although I missed her, the powder still got on her clothes." As he spoke, he crouched down and pinched some soil between his fingers. "Look, here's the powder. I'm sure of it." The 3 level 6 men looked at one another, before their gazes all fell on the lake. So the girl jumped into Mirror Lake. Round Face's eyes glinted coldly. "We're going to fish her out." Long Arms raised his right arm, and where his right hand should be, there was an iron hook. It was very sharp, and the air it gave off could chill one to the bone. If one looked closely, one could see that the iron hook was retractable. As expected, the man threw the hook into the lake. No one knew how far the hook could reach. When he drew it back, there was a black object on the hook. "What is it?" Everyone looked at it with a frown. Thud. Long Arms released the thing, and it landed on the ground. It then waved its red claws ferociously. "Is that a crab?" Everyone was shocked. How could a crab be so big? It was several meters long, and its claws were as sharp as razors. Crack. Chapter 2201. Where is she? Chapter 2201. Where is she? The giant crab easily snapped an arrow in half. Everyone drew in their breaths. What sort of dangerous creatures lived in this lake? Is Fengwu really down there? If so, is she still alive? Looking at the calm lake, they hesitated. The unknown was the scariest thing. This giant crab might not be able to injure them, but could there be more dangerous things in the water? Everyone looked at the level 6 man with the iron hook. The man nodded and threw the retractable hook into the lake again. Whoosh! He fished out a 1-meter-long crab. Whoosh! A 2-meter-long crab. Whoosh! Another giant crab. As more and more crabs were fished out, their fear toward the lake gradually faded. I don't think there's anything too terrible down there. If there were, we wouldn't have found just giant crabs. We need to go down there. And we need to be quick about it, before she uses up the seed. The 3 level 6 spiritual lords all looked at the level 5. The level 5 man felt his stomach lurch. What? Go, ordered a level 6 man. The level 5 man wanted to say no, but the other 3 were all more capable than he was. Luckily, he still had his crossbow. He swallowed and nodded. He was ready to jump into the lake. At the same time, at the bottom of the lake, Fengwu was hiding in some water weeds, and she was surrounded by giant crabs. She had buried her face in her lap and her back was to the crabs. With the soft armor she was wearing, the giant crab's sharp claws couldn't touch her. She was like a tortoise well protected by her shell. The giant crabs wanted to take the human apart and eat her. But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't do anything to her. They didn't know what to do. But they didn't want to give up either. Since Fengwu had started cultivating with the seed of the spirit source, she became a moving source of spiritual essence. Of course, the giant crabs wanted to follow her around. Therefore, they were still packed densely around her even when they couldn't breach her defenses. More crabs kept coming, and there was a great pile of them. Fengwu began to regret her decision. She had never thought that she would attract so many crabs. It wouldn't take a genius to notice this abnormality. As expected, right at that moment, ding! An arrow was shot in her direction. Although the water weakened its momentum, it was more than enough to kill a crab. The giant crabs had gathered around Fengwu because they wanted a taste of her spiritual essence. Sensing the danger, they scattered immediately. Chapter 2202, Not hard to locate her. Chapter 2202, Not hard to locate her. Fengwu didn't know what to say. As soon as they were gone, she was exposed. Seeing Fengwu huddled at the bottom of the lake, the level 5 man smirked. At the same time, at the foot of the mountain, Emperor Wu sat in the tent with a solemn look on his face. There weren't many people in the tent, but they were all the emperor's trusted followers. There were Lord Mu, Master Dugu, Empress Dugu, Ranmil, and several other officials. The Empress Dowager and Lady Northern Foam were both there. Because the emperor had just thrown a tantrum, the atmosphere in the room was very tense. No one dared to utter a word. No one knew what was going on up the mountain, so they were all very anxious. Ranmil's eyes darted around, and there was a calculating look in them. But no one noticed it. Ranmil moved closer, and whispered something in Emperor Wu's ear. Emperor Wu's eyes lit up. "Are you sure?" Ranmil nodded and said softly, "I do have it, but it costs a great amount of spiritual essence to activate it, so I can't work it for a long time. 5 minutes. That's the longest I can keep it up for." Emperor Wu nodded. "Great. Do it." Everyone looked at them in bewilderment, and didn't know what was going on. Especially Empress Dugu. She was alarmed by Ranmil's move. Ranmil didn't keep them guessing. She soon let them know what it was about. She showed them her right hand. A crystal ball was in her palm. Her fair skin and slender fingers were a perfect match for the transparent crystal ball. The light it reflected shone on her face, enhancing her delicate features. Empress Dugu was so jealous that she thought she was going to lose her mind. But right now, no one cared much about Ranmil's pretty hand. They were all confused by the crystal ball. Ranmil said, "With this crystal ball, we can see what's happening on the mountain." Hearing this, the Empress Dowager looked like she had just woken up from a dream. She suddenly sat up and shouted, "Let me see Junjun." Needless to say, nothing was more important to her than Jun Linyuan. The others looked at Ranmil in amazement as well. They had been anxious because they didn't know what was happening on the mountain. If they did, they would feel much more reassured. Ranmil felt everyone's gazes on her. She sighed inwardly. She wanted to see Jun Linyuan as well, but His Royal Highness is too powerful for a mortal man. I'm not sure the crystal ball can locate him. Ranmil frowned. Then what the hell is that thing for? The old lady was so angry that she yelled at Ranmil. Her reprimand made Ranmil flush. She looked at Emperor Wu with teary eyes. Emperor Wu suddenly said, "Isn't Feng Wu with Jun Linyuan? Can you locate her?" Those were the words Ranmil had been waiting for. Therefore she immediately said, "That's right. Miss Feng Wu is only a level 7 spiritual elder, so it's not difficult to locate her at all." Chapter 2203 Untitled. Chapter 2203, Untitled. Empress Duga tried to challenge Ranmil. "Feng Wu isn't as mediocre as you think. Are you sure you can do it?" Ranmil smiled. "Yes. Miss Feng Wu is a capable cultivator, but she's only a level 7 spiritual elder, and my crystal ball is more than enough to deal with that." Empress Duga smirked. She had dealt with Feng Wu before and knew that the girl could outsmart just about everyone. Because of that, Empress Duga didn't think that Ranmil could get what she wanted so easily. Ranmil didn't think much of it. When the mysterious man of the Dongsang Kingdom gave her the crystal ball, he told her that the lower one's cultivation level was, the easier it was to locate them. Ranmil had planned this in advance and collected some of Feng Wu's hair. She was ready to get on with her work. However, when she started injecting her spiritual essence into the crystal ball, she realized that something wasn't right. At an angle the others couldn't see, Ranmil burned Feng Wu's hair. She then activated 30% of her spiritual essence. The crystal ball looked foggy and gave no reaction. Ranmil frowned. This shouldn't be happening. The mysterious man of the Dongsang Kingdom told her, when he gave her the crystal ball, that for a level 7 spiritual elder like Feng Wu, Ranmil only needed to activate 30% of her spiritual essence to locate her. Ranmil didn't panic. Instead, she activated more spiritual essence. The crystal ball remained foggy and inactive. Ranmil was surprised. At the same time, everyone began to give her strange looks. Empress Duga said, "Didn't you say that it would be very easy to locate her? Why can't we see anything?" Ranmil was sweating a little. She was still Emperor Wu's favorite, so he was on his side. He threw a dirty look at Empress Dugu and said, "Shut up." Empress Dugu was furious. Lady Northern Feng had conflicted feelings about it. Feng Wu was her goddaughter, so of course she cared about her. She wanted to see Feng Wu, but at the same time, she was worried that if the crystal ball did locate Feng Wu, it would somehow expose her secret. Ranmil didn't have the energy to care about other people, because she had activated all her spiritual essence now. This shouldn't be happening. She was frustrated. Even if some miracle had taken place, and Feng Wu had risen all the way to the spiritual lord stage, all that spiritual essence would have been enough. Why couldn't she do anything? Poor Ranmil. How could she ever imagine what had happened to Feng Wu? It was more than rising from being a spiritual elder to a spiritual lord. Feng Wu was already a level 4 spiritual lord. And she still had a lot of potential. "Let me help you." Emperor Wu held Ranmil's hand, and a great amount of spiritual essence flowed into the crystal ball. Ranmil had thought that the ball wasn't working, but with the additional spiritual essence, the crystal ball suddenly became clear. Whoosh. Chapter 2204 Untitled. Chapter 2204, Untitled. Because of the overexertion of her spiritual essence, Ranmil could taste blood in her mouth. But she had made the big announcement, and spitting out blood would only make herself a laughingstock. Therefore she swallowed back the blood. Everyone kept their attention on the crystal ball, so no one noticed her reaction. There was an image in the crystal ball. They saw a lot of shooting arrows flying toward something. Empress Duga cried out, "Look at that robe! Isn't that what Feng Wu was wearing?" Feng Wu. Hearing that, everyone looked into the ball. It was smaller than a fist, so everyone had to come very close to look at it. Meanwhile, whoosh, 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 whoosh. Under the lake, the arrows kept flying toward Feng Wu. That's... Lord Mu cried out. The attacker is at least a level 5 spiritual lord. Will Miss Feng Wu be able to dodge them? They were all too far away to help her. Where is His Royal Highness? Is the Crown Prince not with Xiao Wu? Lady Northern Feng was concerned about Feng Wu the most. She clenched her fists nervously and said, "What should we do now? What should she do now?" Many people were laughing inwardly. Why did Ranmil want to show this to everyone? Because the man had told her what was going to happen, and she wanted everyone to see Feng Wu's miserable death. Luckily, she was on time. Not only that, she was also going to show the best part. Ranmil looked thrilled. She wasn't the only one. Empress Dugu hated Feng Wu to the bone. With what happened to Jun Wuxia, she wanted to see Feng Wu dead. Now that she believed that Feng Wu was going to die, how could she not feel excited? Master Dugu and Lord Mu were both secretly excited as well. The Empress Dowager kept a very straight face. While everyone was watching carefully, whoosh, 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 more arrows were shot. They all hit Feng Wu. And they immediately turned Feng Wu into a hedgehog. Ah, Ranmil looked like she had been frightened. She covered her mouth and opened her eyes wide. She was almost in tears. Your Majesty, Feng Wu was... How could anyone survive that? Emperor Wu was astonished. He opened his mouth, but couldn't utter a word. Was the girl dead? Was she so easily killed? She was supposed to be as smart as Jun Linyuan, and have 9 lives like a cat. How could she die so soon? He didn't know what to think. His head had gone blank. Lord Mu and Master Dugu looked at each other, and both seemed satisfied. Great. That was great. The girl was finally dead, and the imperial capital would be as peaceful as it used to be. Lady Northern Feng almost fainted. Chapter 2205, All Eyes on Feng Wu. Chapter 2205, All Eyes on Feng Wu. While everyone was forming their own ideas suddenly, the hedgehog suddenly rumbled. That sound. All cultivators knew what that sound was. A breakthrough. That wasn't right. Everyone almost jumped to their feet. The arrows had been shot by a level 5 spiritual lord, and they would have been very powerful. Feng Wu was only a level 7 spiritual elder. She was way too weak. There was no way that she could survive those arrows. However, they suddenly realized that something wasn't right. Not only was there the rumbling sound of Feng Wu the hedgehog, making a breakthrough, spiritual essence was rushing toward her as well. So Feng Wu is the one who's having a breakthrough, not that level 5 spiritual lord, Lord Mu murmured to himself. Feng Wu began to move. She rose to her feet and straightened her back. As a result, all the arrows on her back fell to the ground. She then spread her arms with her eyes closed, as if she was absorbing the energy of nature. Master Dugu looked like he felt quite sorry about that. Feng Wu, she's not dead? The smile froze on Rammel's face, and she didn't know what else to say. Empress Dugu felt the same way. Master Dugu didn't let his face betray him. He said, Miss Feng Wu is very lucky. She just happened to be making a breakthrough when the arrows hit her. She was thus protected by the power of nature, which was why, as a level 7 spiritual elder, she could. He stopped mid-sentence. That was because he saw how dense the spiritual essence around Feng Wu was. Is she really a level 7 spiritual elder? Empress Dugu was perplexed. Most people here had been spiritual elders before, and they knew how dense the spiritual essence should be. Master Dugu, for instance, could tell right away that Feng Wu was facing a level 5 spiritual lord, so why couldn't see what level Feng Wu was at? In fact, he could, but he wouldn't believe it. That's impossible. He rubbed his eyes. That was how shocked he was. Father, Empress Dugu wasn't an advanced cultivator and couldn't tell the difference. But many people in the room could. A spiritual lord? Since when did Feng Wu become a spiritual lord? Isn't she a spiritual elder? Emperor Wu asked in bewilderment. Lord Mu and Master Dugu looked at each other, and both nodded. We met Miss Feng Wu yesterday. She was a level 7 spiritual elder then. Emperor Wu said. But she's already a level 4, no, level 5 spiritual lord now. Spiritual lords were already very rare in the empire. If she could reach the peak of the spiritual lord stage, she might even get a title. Of course, that didn't mean that she would become a genuinely influential official. From a level 7 spiritual elder to a level 5 spiritual lord. The difference between the two levels was bigger than between heaven and earth. Chapter 2206 Shocking. Chapter 2206 Shocking. If Feng Wu was considered to have some potential when she was a level 7 spiritual elder, after becoming a level 5 spiritual lord, she had become a force that couldn't be ignored. She had earned a name in the empire. If she worked for Imperial College, she would have become a tutor by now. That's impossible, Empress Dugu murmured to herself. Ranmil was so furious that her eyes were almost bleeding. She clenched her fists and gritted her teeth when she said, "She had the seed of the spirit source all along, didn't she?" The seed of the spirit source. That reminded everyone. Emperor Wu smacked the table in excitement. That's right. It's really possible if the girl has the seed. Ha! This really is a pleasant surprise. Why was Emperor Wu so against the marriage between Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan? Because she was a good-for-nothing. Marrying her would be a humiliation to his talented son. But things had changed now. Although Feng Wu had lost her talent once, she had caught up with everyone else, and had begun to make rapid progress again. Less than a handful of people her age could do such a thing in the Junwu Empire. I like this girl. She's very good. Emperor Wu laughed. Empress Dugu was alarmed. Ranmil was also deep in thought. Feng Wu had to die. Someone cried out at that moment. Look, in the crystal ball, Feng Wu, who was already a level 5 spiritual lord, stepped forward. The man opposite her seemed frightened. Sensing that things were turning against him, he turned to run. However, Feng Wu blocked his way before he could make a move. Feng Wu reached out. Her slender fingers seemed to have great power in them. She then grabbed the man by the neck. Ah! The next moment his neck was snapped. Everyone watched as this happened. The man's neck twisted at an impossible angle, and his tongue hung out of his mouth. Feng Wu seemed to sense that she was being watched. She turned in the direction of the crystal ball and grinned. Ah! Ranmil was genuinely frightened. It seemed like Feng Wu was mocking her. How? Empress Dugu murmured. Even if she's a level 5 spiritual lord, isn't her opponent a level 5 as well? How can she? She wanted to ask how Feng Wu was able to snap the man's neck so easily. They were both of the same level, weren't they? This time, even Master Dugu didn't know what to say. Because he didn't know the answer either. No one in the room did. Xiao Wu won. She's safe. Lady Northern Feng finally let out a breath of relief. Empress Dugu glared at Lady Northern Feng. She was filled with hatred. Chapter 2207 Danger. Chapter 2207 Danger. Everyone look, Lord Mu cried out. Hence they all looked at the crystal ball again. Feng Wu had caught all their attention, and no one was asking why Jun Linyuan wasn't there anymore. Meanwhile, after snapping the level 5 man's neck, Feng Wu immediately sensed the imminent danger, so she rolled over the ground and away from the spot. She was right. She only made it a few meters when a hook landed from above and almost scraped her scalp off. The moment after the hook missed her, 3 men arrived. Oh God! 3 level 6 spiritual lords. Who did she mess with? This is such a big operation. Everyone was talking among themselves. Even Emperor Wu was amazed. There weren't that many level 6 spiritual lords in the entire Junwu Empire. To kill Feng Wu, her enemy had sent 3 at one go. Emperor Wu was more concerned about the force that was powerful enough to send out such a team. What worried Lady Northern Feng was 3 level 6 spiritual lords? Xiao Wu is only a level 5. What should she do? Empress Dugu was laughing inwardly and happy to see Feng Wu's predicament. Ranmil finally didn't feel so jealous anymore. She looked into the crystal ball and gritted her teeth. That was why it had been so hard to activate the crystal ball. Feng Wu's progress had been too rapid. After yet another breakthrough, It was only more difficult for Ranmil to keep the crystal ball activated. She could feel herself being drained of spiritual essence. She already wanted to shut down the crystal ball. Why should she show the others Feng Wu's glorious moment? Luckily, those 3 men arrived. It was obvious that they were here to kill Feng Wu. Please kill her. Please. Ranmil prayed as she fought back the pain of overworking her spiritual essence. The 3 men didn't disappoint the viewers. As soon as they reached the bottom of the lake, they spotted their fallen teammate. Damn it. She's made a breakthrough again. And she killed him as well. She just finished advancing, and her spiritual essence is still spilling out. The fish will follow her. Find the fish, and we'll find her. The fish are heading southeast. Let's split up and surround her. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 men no longer tried to hide their capabilities, as they moved as fast as they could. The water was only dimly lit by the moon. At the bottom of the lake, Feng Wu soon sensed the danger. The feeling was getting stronger and stronger. Feng Wu was alarmed. It seemed that one of them was good at controlling water. She was right. They found her within seconds. The man exerted all his power and froze the water into arrows, which flew at Feng Wu. Die! Once Feng Wu was killed, they would be able to remove the seed. Feng Wu sensed danger. Turning around, she saw countless arrows behind her. The arrows raised tidal waves in the water. They were dangerous, but... Chapter 2208 South Sea Technique 1. Chapter 2208 South Sea Technique 1. Feng Wu smirked. She was no longer how she used to be. Level 6 spiritual lords, are they? Feng Wu murmured. Do they really think that there's nothing I can do? She was going to confront them. Emperor Wu and the others were all shocked. Lord Mu said, Feng Wu is a level 5 spiritual lord now, and that's very unexpected, but her opponents are all level 6 spiritual lords who are exerting all their might. Why did she stop? She should be running for her life. Master Dugu snorted. How ignorant. Empress Dugu and Ranmil both looked expectantly at the crystal ball. Just like Master Dugu, they were laughing at Feng Wu's silly decision and hoping that the 3 men would kill her. Lady Northern Feng was the only one who was genuinely concerned. She clenched her fists and prayed, Xiao Wu, hang in there. Jun Linyuan will come for you. Emperor Wu had an indecipherable look on his face. While they were all forming their own ideas, thump, there was a loud noise. OMG! The onlookers cried out in surprise. Feng Wu had stopped. Not only that, she was also walking toward the spiritual lord who had shot the ice arrows. She was very fast, and in a few steps, she was in front of the man. But no matter how fast she was, she couldn't dodge all the ice arrows. Whoosh, 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 1, 2, 3. The man kept shooting arrows at Feng Wu. He knew that the head and upper body were the weak spots. Feng Wu had covered her head, so the man aimed at her chest and abdomen. But he was well aware that he was losing the battle. That was because Feng Wu was wearing soft armor, the one that Jun Linyuan had given her. No blade could penetrate the armor, and it wouldn't be affected by water or fire. Even a level 7 spiritual lord couldn't leave a dent on it, let alone the arrow of a level 6 spiritual lord. The arrow struck Feng Wu, but they didn't inflict any real injury. However, other people didn't see it that way. They believed that she had been severely injured and was bound to die. Gosh, look at all those arrows on her. There's no way she can survive that. She should have run when she had the chance. Did she think that she could fight a level 6 spiritual lord? She had it coming. Everyone was discussing Feng Wu animatedly. Ranmil heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, Feng Wu was going to die. She would finally be rid of her. She wasn't alone in this. The 3 assassins felt the same way. They were all certain that Feng Wu was going to die. The one with the ice arrows was the most confident of them all. With the black scarf over his face, no one could see his expression, but it seemed that he was smiling in satisfaction. But his smile soon froze. The girl was standing in front of him with all the ice arrows sticking to her body. Chapter 2209 South Sea Technique 2. Chapter 2209, South Sea Technique 2. Her slender arms seemed so weak, but they could bring death when she wanted them to. Suddenly, her hands were on his neck. She was too fast for anyone to react. Feng Wu smirked. "I'm sorry, but you're going to die first." Crack. Feng Wu snapped his neck. It was a matter of life and death, so she couldn't afford to be lenient. The 3 level 6 spiritual lords would be a great threat if they joined hands. Therefore, she wouldn't waste any chance to weaken her opponents. "You." The other 2 spiritual lords were astonished to see their teammate fall. They stared at Feng Wu. They weren't the only ones who were shocked. No one around the crystal ball could believe their eyes. That man was a level 6 spiritual lord. There were only so many spiritual lords in the empire. And Feng Wu had just killed one. Teach this. Hasn't she been shot? That's right. Look at all the arrows on her. Isn't she injured? Haven't you noticed? She's not bleeding at all. Lord Mu was the first to notice it. Immediately, all eyes were on Feng Wu. If her internal organs were injured, she could be easily killed. However, Feng Wu had no blood on her. Just then, thump, there was a strange sound. What was that? They then realized that it was the sound of cracking ice. Was it from the ice arrows? It was. They were amazed when they saw the ice arrows on Feng Wu's abdomen begin to melt. Chunks of ice then fell down. No, this can't be happening. Round Face stared at Feng Wu. Even we can't do anything to those arrows, so why can you? You're only a level 5 spiritual lord. That was right. Why? The people around the crystal ball were bewildered as well. Only Emperor Wu seemed to know the answer. That brat. Everyone looked at him. They wondered what he meant. Empress Dugu immediately asked, "Your Majesty, do you know the reason?" Emperor Wu didn't answer. Ramil was also curious. She held Emperor Wu's sleeve and swayed it back and forth with a pitiful look on her face. Emperor Wu rubbed her head and sighed. "It's the soft armor. He gave it to Feng Wu." SSSS. Hearing that, everyone drew in their breaths. The soft armor. The one that no blade can penetrate. Didn't it belong to the late eldest princess, the crown prince's beloved sister? Empress Dugu panicked a little. The Empress Dowager had brought up Jun Linyuan and his sister together. Chapter 2210 South Sea Technique 3. Chapter 2210, South Sea Technique 3. Before, the princess was the only one who could tell Jun Linyuan off, and the only one whom Jun Linyuan would listen to. After she died, Jun Linyuan charged into her residence with a sword and killed her husband, as well as many others. It astonished the entire imperial capital, and since then, no one dared to mention the princess's name. That soft armor used to belong to the princess. No one was allowed to mention it, let alone touch it. Empress Dugu coveted it, and had tried to take it through the emperor. Neither of them wanted to mention again what happened after that. But now Feng Wu was wearing it. It's not possible. It can't be the soft armor. Empress Dugu still tried to convince herself. Other people might not know the connection between the soft armor and the late princess, but she did. Emperor Wu glared at her. What other armor can block all the arrows? Have you forgotten what else the soft armor can do? It can absorb spiritual essence. That was right. Stopping blades, water, and fire wasn't the most important trait of the armor. Advanced cultivators could eventually form shields with their spiritual essence to protect themselves. Therefore, Emperor Wu and Empress Dugu weren't impressed by that trait. The hidden trait of the soft armor was that it could transform the force hitting it into energy that could be used by the wearer. That was to say, Feng Wu had absorbed all the spiritual essence in the ice arrows. Everyone was speechless. If that's the case, attacking Feng Wu would in fact be helping her cultivation, said Lord Mu. Emperor Wu nodded. The crowd was speechless. Empress Dugu realized something else. The soft armor was precious also because it was left behind by the princess. What did Jun Linyuan mean by giving it to Feng Wu? At first, Empress Dugu had thought that the feelings Jun Linyuan had for Feng Wu wouldn't last long. She thought that he would dump her at any moment. But he had given her the armor. That felt very serious. If Jun Linyuan was serious about Feng Wu, how would he avenge her if she was killed? Empress Dugu wished that she hadn't realized this fact. Looking up, she saw the unchanged looks on other people's faces, and she shook her head. Ranmil said softly, "So what? Maybe His Royal Highness only lent it to Feng Wu. Plus, there are 2 more level 6 spiritual lords left. Are we so sure that Feng Wu can win?" The others all nodded in agreement. Empress Dugu lowered her gaze. If they still believed that Jun Linyuan was only messing around with Feng Wu, they were doomed. She didn't utter a word after that. At the same time, Feng Wu rubbed her belly. There was a warm sensation, and her spiritual essence had been replenished. That was strange. Just then, the 2 men attacked Feng Wu together. They didn't dare be careless anymore. Apart from the 2 of them and their master, the rest of the team had all been killed by Feng Wu. Chapter 2211 South Sea Technique 4. Chapter 2211 South Sea Technique 4. Die! The 2 spiritual lords struck together. They didn't believe that the 2 of them would be defeated by a level 5 spiritual lord. But to their surprise, Feng Wu just stood there and didn't try to dodge. There was a loud thump when the 2 men hit her in the stomach. Feng Wu flew backward, but she wasn't injured. Not only that, she even felt some spiritual essence flowing into her body. OMG! She realized in surprise that she could use the soft armor to absorb other people's spiritual essence. An idea then struck Feng Wu. She could only use the seed of the spirit source for a limited number of breakthroughs. The advancement eggs that Jun Linyuan had created for her were almost used up. There were only 2 left. She couldn't bring herself to use them up. Since the 2 men here could provide her with spiritual essence, why waste it? Getting hit was good news to her. At that thought, Feng Wu bolted. She ran away. Having no idea that this was a trap, the 2 men grinned. "Where do you think you're going? Let's get her." The 2 men split up. The lake was round, and they planned to hem Feng Wu in. But they had no idea that once they separated, it was the beginning of their disaster. The man with the iron hook was on Feng Wu's heels. "Stop!" he bellowed, and threw out the hook at Feng Wu's back. Whoosh! To his surprise, the hook caught her. Whoosh! He retracted the hook, pulling Feng Wu back with it. He was so thrilled that he shook from head to toe. He didn't expect that it would be so easy. Thump! 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 Once he caught Feng Wu, he started punching her in the stomach. Non-stop, and he spared no effort. Sweat poured down his face. Feng Wu kept shouting as if she was injured, but everyone looking into the crystal ball was amazed. If Emperor Wu hadn't told them about the soft armor, they would really believe that Feng Wu had been defeated and was crying out in pain. But that wasn't the case. Feng Wu's spiritual essence is increasing. Lord Mu saw through Feng Wu's plan. She's letting him hit her on purpose. Because she absorbed all that man's spiritual essence when he hit her. That man was relentless. Have you noticed? That man's capability is falling. Master Duga drew in his breath. If he keeps hitting her like that, he'll soon become a level 5 spiritual lord. Lord Mu was astonished. Does the soft armor contain the legendary witchcraft of star suction? It's supposed to be able to enhance the wearer's power by draining other people's spiritual essence. Gosh, everyone sucked in their breaths. They had no idea that the armor could do that. It looks like it. Although Master Dugu wanted to deny it, he knew that it was the truth. Won't it be very easy for Feng Wu to make breakthroughs? Chapter 2212 Untitled. Chapter 2212 Untitled. Many people looked as disappointed as if their parents had died. Other people tried to cover it up, but the look on Ranmil's face was too obvious. No one responded to her words because it was the truth. There's an ancient technique attached to the soft armor, known as the South Sea Technique. Emperor Wu narrowed his eyes. The man who once ruled this continent inscribed it himself. The man who once ruled the continent. The one who was too powerful to be named. Everyone fell silent. Did His Royal Highness give Feng Wu the soft armor then? She didn't just stumble upon it herself? Ranmil asked jealously. Empress Duga said grumpily. The crown prince has always had the soft armor. How could Feng Wu just stumble upon it? Ranmil was silent. Emperor Wu gave her a meaningful look. Ranmil didn't dare utter a word. Meanwhile, on the other side of the crystal ball, the man was still punching Feng Wu. He pounded Feng Wu's stomach with his fist over and over again. His formidable fist was covered with golden light. Thump, thump, thump. He gloated as he punched her. But he failed to notice that with each punch, he lost a little more spiritual essence, while Feng Wu gained a little more. As the people watched, they shouted inwardly, "Stop! Stop now!" Because the longer he hit her, the more power she would gain. He was feeding Feng Wu's spiritual essence at the cost of his own. He had practically turned into her energy source. Ranmil gritted her teeth. She almost wanted to shut down the crystal ball, because she didn't want to see Feng Wu being so successful. But she didn't want to give up because she believed that things would turn around eventually. That stupid man! How had he become a level 6 spiritual lord when he was such an idiot? Keep punching Feng Wu, and he would turn her into a level 6 spiritual lord. Ranmil wasn't the only one who was frustrated. Neither Master Dugu nor Lord Mu enjoyed watching it either. No one would be happy when their enemies got stronger right in front of their eyes. But they couldn't remind the man. Until the man finally realized something was wrong. Although Feng Wu had been shouting non-stop, she didn't seem affected by all the punching at all. He, on the other hand, felt his spiritual essence being exhausted. He realized what was happening. He stopped and stared at Feng Wu. Why are you still not dead? He had punched her at least 100 times. With all the power he had used, he could have killed a level 7 spiritual lord, let alone a level 5 spiritual lord. But Feng Wu was still alive. Although she had been yelling, it was so exaggerated that she sounded like she was faking it. Moreover, she had just caught his hand and pushed him away. He glared at her. Feng Wu straightened her clothes and looked at the man with a smile. The man was shocked. Not only wasn't she dead, she also didn't seem injured at all. Chapter 2213 Untitled. Chapter 2213, Untitled. You're unscathed, the man said in a shaking voice. Feng Wu crossed her hands behind her back and nodded with a smile. That's right. The man's eyes widened. You're neither dead nor injured in your power. A rumbling sound came from Feng Wu at that moment. The man's stomach lurched. He was only too familiar with that sound. It was the sound of a breakthrough. As expected, under the man's gaze, Feng Wu became a level 6 spiritual lord with little difficulty. The man's eyes almost popped out. That's impossible. He gritted his teeth. How can you make a breakthrough now? Did you use up the seed of the spirit source? Feng Wu grinned at him. I guess I owe you a big thank you. The man glared at her. What do you mean? Feng Wu said casually. I wouldn't have been able to make such rapid progress if you hadn't punched me so many times and given me all that spiritual essence. The man wouldn't believe it. Ridiculous. You did it by using the seed of the spirit source, didn't you? Feng Wu smiled. I can't waste it like that, can I? Why should I use it when I can use your spiritual essence? The man shouted. I don't believe you. Feng Wu smiled. Believe what you like. You're a level 5 spiritual lord now. That shocked the man. When he checked his body, SSSS, he drew in his breath. That was why he felt drained. It was because he had dropped to become a level 5 spiritual lord. How is this possible? How could his level drop? The man was no longer a level 6 spiritual lord. He shouted, What did you do to me? Feng Wu shrugged. You gave me the spiritual essence willingly and helped me make a breakthrough. Why are you blaming me now? The man gritted his teeth and bellowed. I didn't. Feng Wu smiled at him. He suddenly had a realization. Was I helping you when I hit you? Did you absorb my spiritual essence? That explained everything. That was why he had to gather more spiritual essence with each subsequent punch. It was you. He stared at Feng Wu. You're a witch. You. At that moment, Round Face finally arrived. Seeing him, the one with the iron hook shouted, Hey, this girl. Thump. Feng Wu struck him before he could reveal her secret. The man fell and couldn't get up. Blood poured out of his mouth. He wanted to speak but couldn't utter a word. Seeing his teammate fall, Round Face was furious. Chapter 2214 Untitled. Chapter 2214, Untitled. He was so frustrated. How careless of him. They shouldn't have split up. Otherwise his teammate wouldn't be injured like this. Are you a level 6 spiritual lord now? When he examined Feng Wu, he realized in frustration that she had made a breakthrough again. How unfair. The man bellowed. You were only a level 7 spiritual elder when we entered the woods, but you've risen all the way to a level 7 spiritual lord now. You're not human. Feng Wu only chuckled. Round Face shouted. We should have killed you right away. Feng Wu laughed. Regret your decision now. The man said, I do. Fortunately for me, you've only just made the breakthrough, and your foundation isn't solid yet. I'm more skillful than you and can still defeat you. The man with the iron hook almost spat out another mouthful of blood. He wanted to tell his teammate to run while he still could. Feng Wu would never lose to someone of the same level. He wasn't alone in this. The people who were looking at the crystal ball all felt the same. They wanted Round Face to run away now and stop feeding Feng Wu more spiritual essence. However, the man with the iron hook was too weak to speak. And Round Face couldn't hear the people on the other side of the crystal ball either. He had no idea that everyone thought that he had no hope, and was very confident in himself. Die! He made his move. And what was Feng Wu doing now? At an angle that Round Face couldn't see, Feng Wu grinned. She repeated what she had done to the man with the iron hook. She ran away from Round Face before he caught her. Shit! The man with the iron hook couldn't speak, but he could still see what was happening. He wanted to scream when he saw what Feng Wu was about to do. He hoped that his teammate would be smart enough to see through the trick. He had to be. Many people looking into the crystal ball wished the same. Stop feeding Feng Wu. She was already a level 6 spiritual lord, and she still had the seed of the spirit source. However, one's worst fear would always come true. Thump, thump, thump. Round Face was thrilled when he caught Feng Wu. What did I say? You've only just become a level 6 spiritual lord. There's no way you can beat me, a veteran. The man with the iron hook kept spitting out blood. That girl was faking it. Because he had been cheated once. The audience also knew that Feng Wu was pretending. Round Face was the only one in the dark. Feng Wu also provoked him further. Chapter 2215. Why am I level 4? Chapter 2215. Why am I level 4? Fine, you've caught me. So what? You don't dare hit me. She said it on purpose. Of course, the man was provoked. He smirked. Why wouldn't I? You're going to be in a lot of pain. Thump, thump, thump. He then started punching her. The people watching on the other side were speechless. They watched in silence as Round Face attacked Feng Wu. Thump, thump, thump. He punched her over and over again. Of course, Feng Wu had to look like she was in pain. With each punch, the man was sure that he could kill Feng Wu, but no matter how loudly Feng Wu screamed, she just wouldn't die. The man was confused. Why won't she die? Aren't I using enough strength? He exerted more power. Thump, thump, thump. His punches were even heavier now. He thought that Feng Wu would die, but she was still alive. He didn't know what to do. The man with the iron hook looked at him in frustration and said, Stop. That was all he managed to say. Stop. That infuriated Round Face. He turned to glare at his teammate. Why are you pleading for the girl? Hearing that, the man with the iron hook was so angry that he lost his strength to speak. He kept coughing. Round Face snorted. I must kill her today. Even the master won't be able to stop her when she grows stronger. With that, he started punching Feng Wu again. The man with the iron hook was almost in tears. No, no. But Round Face only punched Feng Wu harder. Until... Wait, Round Face asked the same question his teammate did. What's happening to my spiritual essence? Why am I a level 5 spiritual lord now? Why are you still alive? The man with the iron hook found his reaction idiotic. On the other side of the crystal ball, Ranmil and the others also thought that Round Face was the biggest fool. Feng Wu only smiled at him. Do you want to keep punching me? Round Face was speechless. Feng Wu said, Go on. The man shouted, Shut up. Thump, thump, thump. He punched her again. While he panted from throwing punches, Feng Wu smiled at him. Thank you so much. Thank you. Why was she thanking him? He was feeling utterly confused when Feng Wu made another breakthrough. Again. You're a level 7 spiritual lord now. How? Round Face looked like he had seen a ghost. He examined himself. Why am I a level 4 spiritual lord now? Chapter 22:16 Untitled. Chapter 22:16 Untitled. Round Face looked at Feng Wu like he had seen a ghost. He examined himself. Why am I a level 4 spiritual lord now? The man with the iron hook lowered his head and didn't want to say anything. The people around the crystal ball didn't want to say anything either. Round Face stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. Why? Why? Why aren't you injured? I hit you as hard as I could. Why isn't there a scratch on you? Feng Wu grinned, but she still wasn't entirely satisfied. The spiritual essence Round Face could provide her became thinner and thinner, and she wasn't able to rise to level 8. At that thought, she complained to Round Face. It's all your fault. I couldn't rise to level 8. Round Face was speechless. He wasn't stupid. After all the strange things that had happened, he finally realized something. Did you absorb my spiritual essence and use it as your own? Are you a witch? He gritted his teeth. He looked from Feng Wu to his teammate and asked the man. Did she do the same to you? The man nodded. Why didn't you tell me? Round Face was furious. Why? The man said helplessly. I tried. You wouldn't listen. He was still coughing out blood and looked very weak. Round Face couldn't remember when the man had tried to warn him until he searched his memory. So that was what you meant, he sighed. But it was too late to regret now. Feng Wu shrugged. Now you know. The two men turned to Feng Wu in unison. What do you want? Feng Wu said matter-of-factly. I can't afford to waste time, but I'm patient enough to tell you why you're going to die. Shouldn't you thank me? After that, she finally made her move. Round Face wanted to run, but he was too late. Feng Wu caught him with her right hand and grabbed the man with the iron hook with her left hand. You can die in peace now. She smashed their heads together, killing them instantly. The two assassins were finally dead. Feng Wu heaved a sigh of relief. The audience around the crystal ball was astonished. She was a spiritual lord now. Those two men had both started off as level 6 spiritual lords, but Feng Wu had managed to kill them both. Since they started watching through the crystal ball, Feng Wu had killed 3 level 6 spiritual lords. That was incredible. Ranmil stared at Feng Wu with bloodshot eyes. Right at that moment. Chapter 22:17 Untitled. Chapter 22:17 Untitled. Right at that moment. When Feng Wu got out of Mirror Lake, she saw a man standing in front of her. It was none other than the spiritual king whose identity Feng Wu had guessed. However, with the black scarf over his face, no one else could tell who he was. He narrowed his eyes, and there was a malicious look in his eyes. Especially when he saw that Feng Wu was alive and dead bodies were floating on the surface of the water. He stared at the 4 bodies in disbelief. He recognized their black clothes and black scarves. There were 3 level 6 and 1 level 5 spiritual lords. But Feng Wu was a mere. Wait! The spiritual king's pupils contracted when he looked at Feng Wu. He shouted, That's impossible. Feng Wu smiled at him. He stared at Feng Wu. You're a level 7 spiritual lord. Aren't you a level 7 spiritual elder? Since when did you become a spiritual lord? No one else could do that. It had taken her such a short while. The spiritual king last saw her minutes ago, and she had risen from a level 7 spiritual elder to a level 7 spiritual lord. How was that even possible? Feng Wu shrugged. I'm a genius like that. What can I do? The spiritual king took a deep breath. So you do have the seed of the spirit source. Feng Wu crossed her hands behind her back and smiled at him. She had been stalling. Didn't the bird say that Jun Linyuan was coming soon? Where was he? She had become a level 7 spiritual lord, but she still wasn't powerful enough to fight the spiritual king. He could easily kill her. She was right. The spiritual king finally saw what was going on. He smirked at Feng Wu. So what if you're a level 7 spiritual lord? You're still going to die. On the other side of the crystal ball, this man is a spiritual king. Emperor Wu narrowed his eyes. There aren't many such men in the empire. In other words, he should be someone they all knew. Master Dugu fell silent. He lowered his gaze to avoid meeting Emperor Wu's eyes. He even looked frustrated. It was obvious that he knew who the spiritual king was. He's trying to kill Xiao Wu. Lady Northern Feng stared at the man. Who on earth is he? If he really killed her, Northern Feng Mansion would take revenge for Feng Wu. He looks familiar. Emperor Wu rubbed his chin and was lost in thought. An idea came and went in a flash. Master Dugu grew anxious. He wanted to warn Ming, so that he could leave before it was too late. It was all right to assassinate Feng Wu, but he couldn't kill a genius girl that the crown prince was fond of in front of everyone. The Zhou family would be in a lot of trouble. But how was Master Dugu going to inform his ally? Master Dugu and Empress Dugu looked at each other. Empress Dugu gave him a hint by glancing at Ranmil. Master Dugu nodded. Thump. Chapter 2218, Feng Wu had to die. Chapter 2218, Feng Wu had to die. Master Dugu then sent a streak of energy toward Ranmil. Ranmil was already tired from controlling the crystal ball. What? Ranmil cried out in surprise. With that, the crystal ball began to crack. The cracks soon covered the entire ball. There was a scream, and Ranmil spat out a mouthful of blood. Ranmil! Emperor Wu nervously called her name. But the others only cared about the crystal ball. Why is it broken? I want to see more. What should we do now? Lady Northern Feng was the most anxious of them all. Because she genuinely cared about her goddaughter. She stared at Ranmil and wanted Ranmil to repair the crystal ball. But Master Dugu spoke first. Is Lady Ranmil affected by the backlash? Ranmil put a hand on her chest and nodded. Yes, I was injured when the ball shattered. She covered her mouth and coughed. There was blood on her palm. Emperor Wu immediately said, Don't worry about it. Your health is more important than anything else. Empress Dugu's pupils contracted, and there was jealousy and hatred in her eyes. Lady Northern Feng wanted to say something, but kept her silence in the end. Her Xiao Wu was facing a spiritual king alone. What should she do? Lady Northern Feng was so worried. At the same time, Feng Wu was staring at the spiritual king. The spiritual king was staring back at her. Feng Wu, do you regret it? The spiritual king stared at Feng Wu with his emotionless eyes. Feng Wu glanced at him. What should I regret? The man put his hands behind his back and sighed in a condescending way. If you hadn't returned to the imperial capital, you wouldn't be wealthy, but you wouldn't be dead either. Do you regret it? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. So, Master Zhua, were you going to let me live if I had stayed at the northern border? The man nodded. I would have kept you alive if you weren't so talented. Feng Wu asked why. The spiritual king said, Your miserable life would only make Qingwan look more brilliant. That was why we didn't kill you when we destroyed your cultivation ability. It was Master Zhua who had done that to her. Ming couldn't be bothered to hide his identity. Unfortunately, the crystal ball was broken, and no one on the other side heard it. If they did, the Zhua family's reputation would be ruined. Master Zhua and Feng Wu didn't know that their conversation earlier had been broadcasted, nor did they know that the live stream had been cut off. Master Zhua thought that Feng Wu was bound to die, so he didn't choose his words carefully. I was going to spare your life, but, he shook his head. My children died because of you. It wouldn't be right if I let you live. So, he waved at Feng Wu. Come over here. Feng Wu stepped back involuntarily. She was no fool. Of course, she wouldn't go to him. She turned and ran away. However, she only took a few steps before there was a thump. She ran into an invisible shield, which left a bloody gash on her forehead. Involuntarily she turned. Chapter 2219 Untitled. Chapter 2219, Untitled. There was a thump, and a transparent shield fell from above. The speed and the weight. If Feng Wu hadn't dodged in time, she would have been severed in half. Don't bother. The spiritual king sighed. The walls are all around you, and they'll keep closing in. He was right. As soon as he said that, the walls began to move in toward her. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. The walls forced her to fall back. When they stopped moving, she was also confined in a small area that was only 1 square meter in size. She could see her reflection on the walls around her. The spiritual king shook his head and said, I have to admit that you're more talented than Qingwan. Because of that, Feng Wu had to die. Die? The look in his eyes was very serious. He reached for Feng Wu's thin neck. Jun Linyuan, if you don't get here now, I'm really going to die. Feng Wu shouted into the sky. Jun Linyuan. The spiritual king smirked. He's busy fighting the remaining spies of the Dongseng kingdom. He'll never be. However, he heard a noise before he could finish his sentence. Rumble. The air stirred. Thump. There was an explosion. One of the transparent walls that had cornered Feng Wu was ripped open by an invisible hand. Crack. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder. The extremely handsome teenager walked toward her with a sword on his back. There was something utterly terrifying about him. The power he gave off made one want to tremble and kneel on the ground. Every step he took seemed to shake the ground. It was as if tidal waves were surging behind him. He was too powerful to be described with mere words. Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu didn't realize how happy she was when she saw him. She was finally relieved. Master Zhua, the spiritual king, had been very condescending when spoke to Feng Wu, but he paled when Jun Linyuan showed up. If you tell him who I am, I'll kill your mother. He quickly whispered those words in Feng Wu's ear. Whoosh! He disappeared from sight. He could have killed Feng Wu at the last minute, but he didn't dare take the risk. Jun Linyuan would surely kill him if he killed Feng Wu. Therefore he ran away as fast as he could. Feng Wu frowned when she saw the spiritual king disappear. Aren't you going after him? She asked Jun Linyuan. Just then, Jun Linyuan swayed and fell into her arms. Jun Linyuan? Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu anxiously called his name in a low voice. Little Phoenix landed on her shoulder at that moment and said, His Royal Highness is badly wounded. He was stabbed and shot with many arrows. If you don't treat him now, he'll die. Chapter 2220, Are You Even Human? Chapter 2220, Are You Even Human? Feng Wu removed her hand from Jun Linyuan's back and saw that it was covered with blood. Why did this happen? She murmured. Little Phoenix said grumpily. He killed a lot of people so that they wouldn't come after you. It was a slaughterhouse on the other side of the mountain. They were all ninjas of the Dongseng kingdom. Some of them were very powerful, especially the group leaders. It took Jun Linyuan quite some effort to take them out. Feng Wu checked the trial log. There were 77 people on the revival list, and after Jun Linyuan's battle, there were only 33 left. Of the 7 group leaders, 3 were dead. There were still 4 left. Wait! Feng Wu noticed something unexpected. She checked the surviving members. Of the Saturn and Sun teams, only 1 member was still alive. She believed that it was the woman in the imperial capital. This operation had been carried out by the Moon and Mars teams. The log should show 100% completed if Jun Linyuan had killed all of them. But 10% of the Mars team was still left. That was to say, one of them was still alive. Who was the person? Did they run away? Or were they hiding somewhere? Jun Linyuan was barely breathing, and Feng Wu was busy saving him while worrying about the remaining assassin. And she was right to be concerned. As expected, when she began to sew up a wound on Jun Linyuan's belly, a person appeared behind Feng Wu. Watch out! Little Phoenix shouted. Feng Wu had kept her guard up. When she heard the bird, She grabbed Jun Linyuan and rolled to the side, dodging the attack. Haha. She heard someone laughing coldly behind her. She looked over her shoulder and saw a person standing on the spot where she had been. The person was clad in light green and seemed to be ready to fade into the background at any moment. Are you the leader of the Mars team? Fengwu asked. The person visibly tensed up. He had no idea that the seemingly ignorant girl could uncover his identity. In that case, he couldn't let her live. Because of that, he was distracted for a brief moment. Whoosh! Jun Linyuan moved. No one had expected that with all the blood loss, he could still move. He moved as fast as lightning, and there was a pale golden glow on his right hand. It was with that hand that he grabbed the team leader's neck. The man stared at Jun Linyuan in disbelief. No, he had been hiding in the area since the battle started. Once Jun Linyuan was weakened, he would kill him with a single strike. He had still been cautious when Jun Linyuan was injured. But he no longer suspected anything when Fengwu started sewing up Jun Linyuan's wounds. Even then, he still fell into Jun Linyuan's trap. Why? Why did he still have any strength left? Was he even human? Chapter 22-21. What on earth was she? Chapter 22-21. What on earth was she? Jun Linyuan smirked. Crack. With that sound, the Mars team leader fell to the ground. Fengwu asked, is he dead? Jun Linyuan glanced at Fengwu, but before he could say anything, he swayed and fainted. Fengwu was shocked. She immediately checked his pulse. Such severe injuries. She bit her lower lip. Jun Linyuan had already been badly wounded when he arrived, and it had taken her some painstaking effort to revive him. However, he had torn open his wounds when he snapped the ninja's neck. Blood gushed out again. Fengwu wanted to hit Jun Linyuan. Can't you stay still? Why won't you trust me? Little Phoenix said timidly. That man was a spiritual king. Could you beat him? Fengwu didn't know what to say. She hadn't been able to do anything to Zhuoming. If the team leader was also a spiritual king, she wouldn't have been able to do anything either. However, with his injuries, how could he still kill a spiritual king? Fengwu was astonished. Little Phoenix looked at her and said, now you know how huge the gap is between the two of you. Fengwu didn't know what to say. She then focused on treating Jun Linyuan. Luckily, Fengwu had some pills on her that could treat internal injuries. And, with a flip of her fingers, green light flew out of her fingertips and into Jun Linyuan's wounds. Other people would be astonished if they saw this, because Fengwu's medical skills were unbelievable. In fact, someone did see it. It was none other than the team leader. Jun Linyuan didn't have enough strength left when he grabbed his neck, so the team leader only fainted. Fengwu felt that she was being watched. She suddenly turned around, and their eyes met. The team leader hesitated for a split second. That was all Fengwu needed. Before he realized it, Fengwu pounced on him. Fallen Star Swordplay. Ground Rule. Fire Ground. Intertwining Wood. Ice Sword. Sweeping Wind. Little Phoenix. Feng Tutu. She used everything she had. One stance after another. Having lost the decisive moment, the team leader could only try to defend himself. But Fengwu knew that the man was a spiritual king, and even though he had been injured by Jun Linyuan, he was still much more powerful than she was. The man knew it as well, so he smirked. What should he do? I'm going to make a breakthrough now. Fengwu broke another advancement egg. What was she doing? The team leader found her reaction idiotic. However, the spiritual essence around her really began to stir violently. It then rushed toward her. The team leader's eyes widened. What? She could make a breakthrough just like that? What on earth was she? Chapter 22-22 Untitled. Chapter 22-22 Untitled. I'm going to make a breakthrough now. Fengwu bellowed. With that, she made a breakthrough. The Mars team leader stared at her in disbelief. That wasn't possible. It just wasn't. However, Fengwu stared at him and smirked. Another. What? What the heck? The man's eyes popped. How could anyone achieve that? Who did she think she was? Why could she make breakthroughs as freely as she wanted? That was. Meanwhile, he couldn't try to kill her while she was making her breakthrough. She was so close to becoming a spiritual king. If that really happened, the severely injured team leader wouldn't be her match. Jun Linyuan's sudden attack had robbed him of almost 70% of his ability. Feng Wu smiled. I'm going to become a spiritual king now. What? That was impossible. No way. The man turned to run. He didn't want to stay here anymore. She was so scary. But he didn't know that Feng Wu was only bluffing this time. As soon as he turned his back to Feng Wu, she drew out her fallen star sword. The third stance. Fatal Thunder. Feng Wu spared no effort. Formidable energy from the sword poured into the man from behind. Poof! The blade pierced his body and exited his chest. He looked down at the blade in disbelief. Blood dripped from the tip of the blade. He looked over his shoulder in astonishment. You didn't. His voice was hoarse. If that was the case, why did he run? He could have fought her. He was defeated only because he had tried to run. Rumble. Feng Wu didn't stop there. She twisted the sword, which was still in the man's chest. Ah! The man screamed. He pulled away from the blade and tried to escape. He still had a few tricks up his sleeves. After all, he was one of the 7 team leaders. Moreover, he was also an expert ninja. If he ran into the woods, it would be impossible to find him again. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and shouted. Ground control. Daze. Ground control. Slow down. Ground control. Freeze. She used 3 formidable stances in a row. They drained her of spiritual essence, and her face was very pale. But she successfully rendered the team leader immobile on the spot. Poof! Before the man could move again, she struck down with her fallen star sword. This time, it landed on his head. The impact sliced his head open, and blood gushed out. The last thing the man saw was Feng Wu's face. He never thought that he would be killed by a mere spiritual lord one day. Chapter 22-23. Chapter 22-23, Untitled. Unfortunately, the crystal ball was already broken. If the others had seen what just happened, they would think even more highly of Feng Wu. Feng Wu shook her head, took out the jade plate her beautiful master had given to her, and put it on. The plate immediately hit her cultivation level, so that no one could tell how capable she was. You have the concealing jade. Why? The man couldn't believe his eyes. Feng Wu crouched down and moved closer. Why I have it doesn't concern you. Right now, you need to hand me the revival list. Why do you know that? The man couldn't believe his ears. Feng Wu chuckled. That's not important. Just hand it over. The man smirked and wanted to bite down on his tongue. He wasn't going to survive all his wounds, so committing suicide was his best choice. But Feng Wu gripped his chin before he could do that. Poof! A pill was thrown into his mouth, and it slid down his throat. Feng Wu also made sure that it was quickly absorbed, so that he couldn't spit it out. What did you give me? He bellowed at Feng Wu. Who knew that a spiritual king could end up in such a miserable state? Feng Wu didn't speak, but the man soon realized what he had eaten. Because a sensation was rising inside him. At first it was only a slight tingle in his hands, but soon, it spread all over his body and grew more and more severe. He felt as if he was being stung by 1,000 insects. Ah! He rolled around on the ground with tears running down his face and drool from his mouth. Kill me, he pleaded. That was how powerful the pill was. Even this man couldn't bear it. Feng Sun and Xianyi arrived. They didn't speak and only stood quietly behind Feng Wu as they looked down at the man. The revival list, Feng Wu repeated. I don't know anything about it. Feng Wu crossed her arms and said casually, This is a supreme-level stinging pill. The man stiffened. Feng Wu nodded. I see that you know what it is. I think you also know that without an antidote, this sensation won't go away on its own. I don't know what you're talking about. The man writhed on the ground. Feng Sun was about to step forward when Feng Wu stopped him. She knew that the man would eventually give in. She was right. The man grew desperate until he couldn't take it anymore. He said, "I'll tell you on one condition. I'll let you die after you give me the list," Feng Wu said solemnly. "All right." The man looked into Feng Wu's eyes and said, "Hua Jinxiu has the list." Hua Jinxiu. Feng Wu hadn't heard of that name before, but Feng Sun cried out, "How can it be her?" Thump. While Feng Wu was distracted, the man smashed his head on a big rock next to him. Chapter 22-24. Chapter 22-24, Untitled. The rock shattered, and the man grabbed a handful of the broken pieces. "You!" Feng Sun wanted to stop him, but it was too late. "He's dead." He shook his head with a bitter smile on his face. Feng Wu nodded. He was determined to die. He only pretended to smash his head on the rock, when he was actually planning to choke himself. She had a solemn look on her face. Even death couldn't deter the Mars team leader. That was how tough he was. The Dongseng Kingdom will be a very difficult enemy if they're all like this. Feng Wu shook her head. Feng Sun frowned. "Is it true, the thing he said about Hua Jinxiu?" Feng Wu asked. "Who's Hua Jinxiu?" Feng Sun said. "Hua Jinxiu is a member of the Hua clan. They live a reclusive life in Flower Valley and seldom come out into the world. Unflower was the most famous member of the clan. She killed people in broad daylight on the street in the imperial capital in front of His Majesty, while he was still the crown prince back then. Ever since then, the clan grew even quieter." Feng Sun frowned. "But this ninja has just gotten that clan involved. Hua Jinxiu is the current leader of the clan. It's said that she's as talented as Unflower, if not better. Why would she get involved with the Dongseng Kingdom? I don't believe it." Feng Sun shook his head. Feng Wu didn't reply. Instead, she turned to Xian Yi and asked, "What information did you get from the imperial capital?" Xian Yi shook his head. "We were too late. Mo Haolin's wife has disappeared, and their house was torched. It was a dead end." Feng Sun asked anxiously, "What should we do now?" Feng Wu checked her log. Their plan had lured out over half of the people on the revival list. 44 were dead, and there were 33 left. That was to say there were 3 teams left. They were the Mercury, Jupiter and Venus teams. "We don't even know how many people there are on that list, nor do we know where they are or how many of them have been killed," Feng Sun said in resignation. "We caught a few of them and interrogated them, but they all managed to kill themselves before we could get anything out of them." He was full of despair. Feng Wu was still studying the dead team leader. She moved closer, crouched down and searched his body. Feng Sun smiled wryly. "I checked already. People like him won't carry things on them, in case they're caught." Just then, Feng Wu picked up a jade pendant and showed it to Feng Sun. Feng Sun said, "That's just a common pendant. You can buy it anywhere for next to nothing. The quality is so poor I can't even bring myself to touch it." But at that moment, Feng Wu crushed the pendant. It's a storage pendant that has been modified. The space inside is only as big as a drawer. Feng Wu told Feng Sun after she examined it carefully. "A storage pendant? How's that possible? If that's the case, why?" "I see." An idea suddenly struck Feng Sun, and he smacked his forehead. "I get it now." Chapter 22-25. Chapter 22-25, Untitled. "I see." Feng Sun smacked his own forehead. He used this inferior jade precisely because it's the most important thing. He even put it in the most obvious spot. He must have thought that we would miss it. "Well, I almost did. But how did you notice it?" Feng Sun asked Feng Wu in bewilderment. How did Feng Wu notice it? She didn't at first, but after becoming a level 9 spiritual lord, something changed in her, and she seemed to be able to detect the energy of a magic soul vine. Feng Wu opened her palm, revealing a small plant. "Hey, what's that?" Feng Sun asked curiously. When he saw the sapling, he said, "What's this grass with 4 leaves?" Feng Wu couldn't tell either. She only vaguely knew that it had grown out of her body and had the energy of the magic soul vine. Could it be a baby magic soul vine? She recalled that someone had put the vine's poison in the seed of Spirit Source when she tried to absorb it. She was poisoned, and Jun Linyuan had to swap bodies with her to refine the vine and the seed for her. Now that Feng Wu had used up the seed, was this sapling the outcome of Jun Linyuan's refinement? Xiao Wu? Xiao Wu? Feng Sun called her name when he saw that she was lost in thought. Feng Wu woke up from her reverie and heard approaching footsteps. Hence she didn't reply. Reinforcements had finally arrived. At the foot of the mountain, it had been a fierce battle, and Jun Linyuan could barely walk on his own. Feng Wu helped him down the mountain. When they reached the foot of the mountain, they were welcomed by high-ranking officials. Master Dugu, Lord Mu, Feng Yinfeng, and many others were present. Feng Wu looked in Master Dugu's direction and saw a familiar figure. It was Master Zhua. Their gazes met, and both narrowed their eyes. Zhua Ming gave her a warning look. He regretted his decision. If he had known that Feng Wu would come back alive, he would never have revealed his identity. Therefore, he had to warn Feng Wu not to expose him. Otherwise he would kill her mother. How dare he threaten her with her mother? Feng Wu hated it when other people tried to threaten her. She was filled with rage. She wanted to kill Zhua Ming right here, and now to eliminate the threat, but in the end, she only took a deep breath. She would kill Zhua Ming, but not now. Although she was a level 9 spiritual lord already, it still wasn't enough to kill Zhua Ming. She could wait. She was still improving, whereas Zhua Ming would remain at that level. Soon, she would be able to kill him herself. She gave him one last look before she turned away. Well, Zhua Ming smirked inwardly. He decided it was because she didn't dare offend the powerful Zhua family, even with Jun Linyuan as her patron. Your Royal Highness Miss Feng. As the official in charge of daily affairs on this trip, Lord Mu was kept busy. He hurried over and wanted to give Jun Linyuan a hand. Chapter 2226 Untitled. Chapter 2226 Untitled. But the Crown Prince only gave Lord Mu a cold look. Feng intervened in time. His Royal Highness is very particular with personal hygiene and doesn't like human contact. Lord Mu, I hope you're not offended. Personal hygiene? No human contact. But what about Feng Wu? She was holding his arm. Feng Sang snorted. What about Feng Wu? Why can she do it? Feng answered in a solemn tone. His Royal Highness considers Miss Feng as one of our own. The crowd was speechless. That successfully rendered Feng Sang speechless. Seeing Qiuling and Chaoge in the distance, she snorted. I don't see why she's so proud. She might consider herself a genius, but she's even weaker than her friend and her maid. Feng Sang didn't try to keep her voice down, because she wanted everyone to hear her. That's right. A level 7 spiritual elder isn't bad, but she still isn't as good as Qiuling. Other children of the officials all chuckled and sneered at Feng Wu. At level 7 of the spiritual elder stage, Feng Wu was even below her maid. That was just humiliating. Hearing that, Qiuling frowned and looked displeased. However, the officials who had watched the battle through the crystal ball felt conflicted when they heard that. And so did Zhua Ming, who had fought Feng Wu. Seeing Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan head for the tent, Lord Mu patted Feng Yinfeng on the shoulder and said, Good luck. Feng Yinfeng didn't know how to describe his feelings at the moment. Emperor Wu had summoned him to look into the crystal ball as well. Although it had been near the end, Feng Yinfeng still managed to notice something. Feng Wu wasn't a level 7 spiritual elder at all. She was a level 7 spiritual lord. That made her capable enough to be the head of the Feng clan. That thought made Feng Yinfeng want to cry. He walked up to Feng Sang and gave her a stern look. Shut up. Feng Yuran wanted to speak up for Feng Sang, but his father scolded him as well. Zhua Ming went back to his own tent. Master, Mrs. Zhua quickly walked up to him and asked eagerly, Did it work? Did you get revenge for Qingyu? She knew about Zhua Ming's assassination attempt on Feng Wu, and Mrs. Dugu had told her about the crystal ball. That was why she had hurried back to the tent. The ball had been shattered before Zhua Ming confronted Feng Wu, which was why Mrs. Zhua was so excited. She didn't believe that Feng Wu could escape a spiritual king. Zhua Ming brushed off her hands with a dark face. Mrs. Zhua suddenly had a bad feeling. She moved closer and asked, Master, did the mission fail? Didn't you kill her? Zhuoming said, Shut up. Panic-stricken Mrs. Zhua grabbed his hand and said, That's impossible. My sister-in-law said that you faced Feng Wu alone by the lake and could kill her with a flip of your hand. Why didn't you? By the lake? Face Feng Wu? Master Zhua's stomach lurched. He turned around and stared at his wife. How do you know that? Why do they know that I confronted Feng Wu by the lake? Chapter 2227 Untitled. Chapter 2227 Untitled. Mrs. Zhua said, My sister-in-law said so. Her sister-in-law was none other than Mrs. Dugu. Master Dugu told her. Zhuoming shook Mrs. Zhua so hard that she thought she would throw up. How did Master Dugu know? Zhuoming began to panic. Master Dugu said that Consort Ranmil had a crystal ball. When she injected her spiritual essence into it, it showed her the person she wanted to see. That was how they saw Feng Wu in the ball. What do you mean by saw Feng Wu? Master Zhua felt his mouth go very dry. I think it means that the crystal ball located Feng Wu and showed everything that was happening around her, like a live stream, said Mrs. Zhua. What? Zhuoming felt like he had been struck by a bolt of lightning. Had he been exposed? What? No matter how calm he had been, he was frightened out of his wits now. So they all know that I was going to assassinate Feng Wu? Right now, it didn't sound like an assassination anymore. Everyone might now know it was him. No, it's not like that. Mrs. Zhua tried to calm him down. Master Dugu did something when you appeared in the crystal ball, causing Consort Ranmil to lose control over it. It shattered, and no one saw what happened next. That's why I'm here to ask you if you killed Feng Wu. So my identity wasn't exposed. Master Zhua was relieved. He owed Master Dugu a big favor now. Mrs. Zhua shook her head. No, it wasn't. Master Dugu reacted just in time, so none of them recognized you. Phew. Master Zhua let out a breath of relief. He realized that sweat had soaked the clothes on his back. What happened after that? Did you really let her get away? You could have killed her so easily. Mrs. Zhua stomped her foot. It was such a great opportunity. Master Zhua said. Jun Linyuan arrived. Well, Mrs. Zhua had to admit that her husband didn't have any other choice. So be it then. We'll have plenty of opportunities to kill her in the future, said Mrs. Zhua. By the way, where are your men? Have they gone back home? Jingyang province was the Zhua family's territory, which was why they could send out so many spiritual lords. Mrs. Zhua complained. Not only didn't you kill Feng Wu, but all of them also failed to take down a level 7 spiritual elder. How useless. Master Zhua's face twitched. Where are they? Mrs. Zhua asked curiously. Just then, a man dressed in gray showed up. My lord, we've collected the bodies, all 8 of them. Master Zhua paled. He had thought that some of them might have survived the battle, but as it turned out, they had all been killed. The man with the iron hook was Mrs. Zhua's personal guard. Cremate them, and give the ashes back to their families for burial. Master Zhua gritted his teeth, his face twitching with hatred. Because he couldn't leave any traces behind, he had made the arrangements beforehand. His plan had been to collect Feng Wu's body, but he ended up collecting those of his own men. Yes, the man in gray promptly left after that. Chapter 2228 Untitled. Chapter 2228 Untitled. Collect the bodies? Whose bodies? Wait, where's my guard? Where's Hook? Mrs. Zhua suddenly had a very bad feeling. All adult members of the Zhua family had their own guards, and Mrs. Zhua was no exception. Zhuoming knew that he had to tell Mrs. Zhua, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. Mrs. Zhua panicked and said, I'll go get him. Wait. Master Zhua stopped her. Hook is dead. What? Mrs. Zhua couldn't believe her ears. Did His Royal Highness kill him? Zhuoming shook his head. It was Feng Wu. That can't be true. Mrs. Zhua grabbed the front of her husband's robe and shouted, You're lying. Feng Wu is only a level 7 spiritual elder. Zhuoming remained silent, and gave her a pitying look. Mrs. Zhu's stomach lurched a little. Her brother Master Dugu had also looked at her that way. Mrs. Zhu was originally from a minor branch of the Tao family from Ruyang, and had been brought to the Dugu family when her mother remarried. Therefore, she wasn't very close with Master Dugu. Most of the time, she would address him as Master Dugu instead of brother. Why are you looking at me like that? Mrs. Zhu's voice trembled. Master Zhu said, Feng Wu was the one who killed him. Mrs. Zhu said, Feng Wu is only a level 7 spiritual elder. She's not even good enough to be Qingwan's maid. Didn't you hear them laugh at her? She's even weaker than her own maid. A level 7 spiritual elder? Master Zhu smiled sadly. I wish she was only a level 7 spiritual elder. Mrs. Zhu asked, Is she not? Master Zhu said, Of course not. She's a level 7 spiritual lord at least. Thump, thump, thump. Mrs. Zhu stumbled back and stared at Master Zhu in disbelief. I don't believe you. Master Zhu said, Didn't your brother tell you that Feng Wu has the seed of spirit source, and she was making one breakthrough after another? She was a level 7 spiritual elder when she went up the mountain, but she returned as a level 7 spiritual lord. No, but they're saying, that's because Feng Wu carries something that can conceal her energy, so that no one can tell what her real level is. Master Feng gritted his teeth. Tell our children to stay away from her for the time being. What children? Mrs. Zhu sobbed. We only have 5. Qinglu met his untimely death first, then Qingxian and Qingyu were killed. Qingyi is still cultivating in seclusion, and Qingwan is still out there. I don't have any children to warn anymore. Master Zhu was filled with sadness and rage. Don't worry, my lady. Feng Wu won't live for much longer. Mrs. Zhu threw herself into Master Zhu's arms and burst into tears. Feng Wu helped Jun Linyuan back to his tent. Emperor Wu had sent Lord Mu and the others to pick them up, because he wanted to ask them about what happened on the mountain. However, Jun Linyuan was severely injured, so they went straight back to their tent. Master Dugu and Lord Mu went to report to Emperor Wu. Jun Linyuan lost his balance as soon as he was in the tent. He almost fainted. The impact almost dragged Feng Wu to the ground. It took her a lot of effort to lay him on the bed. She had treated his wounds when they were on the mountain. Chapter 2229 Untitled. Chapter 2229, Untitled. After helping Jun Linyuan lie down, Feng Wu wanted to stand up, but Jun Linyuan wouldn't let go of her skirt. His grip was so tight that she couldn't pry his hand open. Miss Feng. Feng felt sorry for her and tried to save her from the struggle. Please sit down. What do you need? I'll get it for you. That's right, Xiaowu, just stay where you are, said Feng Sen. Just then they heard footsteps outside. It was Gao the eunuch. He was there to bring Feng Wu to Emperor Wu. Feng Wu didn't want to go, because she knew that Emperor Wu wanted to know what had happened on the mountain, and about the revival list. She could see from the log that some of the members were dead, but Emperor Wu couldn't, which was where the problem lay. Moreover, she didn't have any leads at the moment. Now wasn't the best time to see Emperor Wu. Hence, Feng Wu pointed at Jun Linyuan and told Gao, His Royal Highness is still in danger. If I don't keep an eye on him, he might not make it. Gao didn't dare take such a risk and scurried off. Feng Sun gave her the thumbs up. That was amazing, lying to Gao. Many influential men can't wait to suck up to him, you know. Feng Wu said grumpily. If I don't lie to him, I'll have to go to the emperor now. What am I supposed to tell him? I don't have the revival list or any leads. By the way, didn't you say that there's something off about this jade pendant? Asked Feng Sun. Feng Wu nodded. Yes, it's a storage jade. Feng Sun asked, What? Feng Wu said, But it's only a small one, no bigger than the size of a bucket. Feng Sun said, A storage jade? Even if the space is only the size of a bucket, it's worth a fortune. Feng Wu asked, Is it that valuable? Feng Sun said, Of course. All storage jade pendants are. Many people need them to keep secret documents or materials. It's not something one can buy with money. He looked keenly at the jade pendant in Feng Wu's hand. Feng Wu asked, "Do you want it?" Feng Sun took it without hesitation. "Sure." Feng Wu didn't know what to say. "But how do I open it?" Feng Sun fumbled with it for quite a while, but still couldn't open it. Feng Wu said, "Most of the time, it'll recognize its master by tasting their blood." Blood? Before Feng Wu could say anything else, Feng Sun bit his finger and dripped his blood on the jade. They waited for the miraculous moment, but nothing happened. The drop of blood rolled around on the jade before falling to the ground. The jade didn't change, and the storage space didn't open either. Feng Sun was bewildered. Is it possible that it's just an ordinary jade pendant? Did you make a mistake? Feng Wu stared at him. I can detect the size of the storage space. How can I be wrong? Feng Sun said in frustration. How should I open it then? Feng Wu took the pendant and examined it, but she couldn't find anything. She then closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and blocked out all unnecessary thoughts. Chapter 2230 Untitled. Chapter 2230, Untitled. When Feng Wu tried to feel out the jade, she felt the vine on her palm sway a little. OMG, that gave her a strange feeling. What she sensed wasn't what the people of the Zhenhua Empire knew as spiritual essence. Rather, it was the ninja energy of the Dongseng Kingdom. The sapling was also the reason she had noticed the abnormality with the jade. An idea suddenly occurred to her. If the vine could detect ninja energy, did it mean that she could easily recognize a ninja of the Dongseng Kingdom with the help of the vine? At that thought, her eyes snapped open. Xiao Wu, what's going on? Feng Sun saw that Feng Wu's eyes were frighteningly bright. Feng Wu hadn't tested the theory yet, so she couldn't rush to any conclusion. She shook her head and went back to sensing the vine. Open, she commanded. Feng Sun was speechless. Even his blood couldn't do anything to the jade, so he didn't think that Feng Wu's command would work. But to his amazement, the storage space opened with a click. Just like that, Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Feng Wu put her hand inside. It's less than a cubic meter in size. Feng Wu shook her head. It's the size of a bucket at most. Feng Sun said, even so, it's still very valuable. Feng Wu didn't reply. She only started taking things out of the pendant. Not many things could fit inside the jade. The first thing she took out was clothing typical to the Dongseng Kingdom. Jun Linyuan had given Feng Wu a book on the Dongseng Kingdom before, and Feng Wu had obtained a lot of information from that book. She recognized it at first glance. A green battle suit. The Dongseng Kingdom was all about order, and their battle suits strictly reflected that. Spiritual masters didn't have battle suits. Only spiritual grandmasters and above were eligible, and their levels were reflected by the suits they wore. Spiritual grandmasters wore red. Spiritual elders wore orange. Spiritual lords wore yellow. Spiritual kings wore green. She was holding a green suit. Feng Sun couldn't stop staring at it. Feng Wu asked, what? Feng Sun said, look at the inscriptions. As a formation master, Feng Wu was well versed in inscriptions, so she spotted them immediately. Feng Wu asked, what about them? Feng Sun said, they can enhance the effectiveness of the wearer's attacks. My dad's armor has similar inscriptions on it. Do you know why the tiny Dongseng Kingdom was able to successfully invade us 13 years ago, and almost overrun us? Feng Wu asked why. Feng Sun said, because of these inscriptions. Are you sure? Feng Sun said excitedly, of course. The Dongseng Kingdom has many formation masters, and even more inscription masters. Inscriptions were the basic elements of formations. It was safe to say that not all inscription masters were formation masters, but all formation masters had to be inscription masters. Do you know? Nearly all the Dongseng Kingdom soldiers had inscriptions on their battle suits. That was why our soldiers on the same level weren't their match. Chapter 2231 Untitled. Chapter 2231, Untitled. And it wasn't just the soldiers. Even our spiritual lords and spiritual kings were defeated by the Dongseng Kingdom soldiers, who were on the same level. Feng Wu frowned. Was it because of the inscriptions? Feng Sun nodded. Yes. Feng Wu was perplexed. If that's the case, our empire should focus on training more inscription masters. Feng Sun smiled wryly. That's easier said than done. Inscriptions are very complicated, and only the smartest and the most focused people have a chance to become inscription masters. The people of Dongseng come by those attributes naturally, which is why they have so many inscription masters. We may have many smart people, but not enough of them have enough focus. Good formation masters are hard to come by, let alone inscription masters. The Dongseng kingdom has many spiritual masters, and even more inscription masters. Their battle suits are lined with inscriptions, and even formations. How are we supposed to fight them? Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Sun said, their ninja skills are a special formation skill. Feng Wu thought about it, and found that to be the case. If we have so few formation masters, can't we import some from the Dongseng kingdom? Feng Wu asked. Coerce them or bribe them. I'm sure some would turn to our side. But Feng Sun shook his head with a wry smile. Do you think we haven't tried? It doesn't work. We could persuade any other member of the Dongseng kingdom, but the formation masters are part of their strategic resources. And if an inscription master dares to come over to our side, their entire clan will be killed. That would deter just about anyone. Feng Wu said, you have a point. Feng Sun said, the problem is that our empire has so few inscription masters, and even fewer formation masters. You're a spiritual lord, and you've seldom worked with inscriptions, let alone add them to soldiers' armor. Am I right? Feng Wu nodded. That explained it. Feng Wu had been wondering why people of the Zhenhua Empire hardly ever mentioned inscriptions or formations. There were simply too few of them for the common folk to know about. The inscriptions aren't very advanced. Feng Wu studied the battle suit. Level 7 at most. She saw the others all give her strange looks. Feng Wu was confused. What? Level 7 is not very advanced. Feng Sun stared at her and gritted his teeth. At most. Feng Wu tilted her head. Is level 7 very advanced? Feng Sun was astonished. He didn't know that Feng Wu had been learning from her beautiful master since she was very little. And her beautiful master had taught her as much as she could remember. She had already learned level 7 inscriptions when she was 6. Her beautiful master had then said that was already enough, and she could learn more advanced levels when she was a little older. Feng Wu told Feng Sun the truth. I already learned level 7 when I was 6. How advanced can it be? Ahem. The crown prince finally woke up at that moment, and when he heard that, he almost spat out the water in his mouth. Feng Wu was bewildered. What's the matter? Chapter 2232 Untitled. Chapter 2232, Untitled. The crown prince looked away. Feng Sun also chuckled. Alright. We'll talk about inscriptions another time. Our top priority is the stuff in this pendant. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. She would surprise them one day. But Feng Sun was right. They needed to examine the things inside. That battle suit was the first item. The second was... Feng Wu held a flaming red spiritual stone in her hand. What's this? She didn't recognize it. Feng Sun didn't know what it was either. He turned it from side to side and even tried to bite it, but the red stone remained inactive. What on earth is it? Everyone was bewildered. The crown prince sipped his tea and said casually, it's pretty useless to humans, but it's good for cultivating magical beasts and magical plants. So I can use it on my magic soul vine. Feng Wu was pleasantly surprised. She had been wondering what she should do about the sapling now that it was proving to be very useful. Not only could she use the vine to detect ninjas, the vine could also make her spiritual energy feel like that of ninjas. In other words, she could pretend to be a ninja of the Dongseng kingdom. Why was it so difficult to detect spies of the Dongseng kingdom in the Zhenhua Empire, but not the other way round? Because people of the Zhenhua Empire were very easy to detect. They couldn't change their spiritual essence. But Feng Wu could. The better the magic soul vine grew, the more useful it would become. She could sneak into the Dongseng kingdom in the future and do all sorts of things. The idea made her very excited. Xiao Wu? Xiao Wu. Feng Sun waved his hand in front of Feng Wu. What are you thinking? Feng Wu finally woke up from her reverie. It's a nice fire spiritual stone. How about you give it to me? Feng Sun wanted to reach for the stone. No. Feng Wu put it in her pocket. It's mine. You can't have it. Little Phoenix also wanted it, and had been nagging Feng Wu in her head, but she ignored the bird. She needed it for the magic soul vine. The third and last item is this, look. Feng Wu took out the last object. It was a book. A very thick book. It had no title, and she couldn't open it, no matter how hard she tried. Feng Wu used all her might, and the book still wouldn't budge. Do you have no energy or something? Why can't you open a book? Give it to me. Feng Sun took the book and tried to turn the pages. Nothing happened. Feng Sun used more force, but he still couldn't open the book. He failed as well. What the hell? What's this book for if no one can open it? Feng Sun complained. Everyone in the room tried, but no one could open it. Is that everything? Feng Sun asked. Feng Wu nodded and gave the pendant to Feng Sun. It's yours. Chapter 2233, Level 7 Inscription Masters. Chapter 2233, Level 7 Inscription Masters. What? Feng Sun was baffled. Xiao Wu, what did you just say? Feng Wu said matter-of-factly, you can have the pendant. Feng Sun said, Xiao Wu, do you even know what this is? It's a storage pendant. He was still babbling on when Feng Wu cut him off. Do you want it or not? If not, yes. Of course I want it. Feng Sun immediately tucked the pendant away, fearing that someone else would take it. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Xiao Wu, don't you want it for yourself? Feng Sun asked. If you do, I can give it to you. Despite what he said, Feng Sun kept his hands pressed to the pocket where the jade was. He didn't look like he wanted to give it away at all. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. I have my own. Not only did she have a storage space of her own, she also had the one from Jun Linyuan as cover. Therefore, she meant it when she said that she didn't need the pendant. I knew that you wouldn't try to take it away from me. Feng Sun also knew about the storage pendant Jun Linyuan had given her. Feng Wu handed the battle suit to Xianyi. Do you want it? Xianyi's eyes lit up. The battle suit had inscriptions on it. With such a suit, he would have a great advantage in fighting cultivators on the same level. Xianyi liked the idea. After that, the thick book was the only thing left. It won't open. Everyone had tried, but no one could make it budge. In the end, Feng Sun had to turn to Feng Wu for help. Xiao Wu, how did you open the storage space? Can you do the same for this book? Feng Wu shook her head. She had tried, but it didn't work. The inscriptions. Jun Linyuan glanced at her and said casually. The inscriptions. Where are they? I don't see any. Feng Sun turned the book over and over in his hands. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Wait. She gestured to Feng Sun to put the book down. She then searched every inch of its cover, until she felt the marks along the edge. That's it. The inscriptions. She cried out in pleasant surprise. They're really there. I almost missed them. Feng Sun looked at the marks that resembled a barcode and asked, Are these really inscriptions? Feng Wu said, Why not? At level 7, inscriptions can be in many forms. One can conceal them in almost anything. You can walk into a trap if you're not careful enough. Why are you so happy about level 7 inscriptions? Feng Sun found her reaction idiotic. You little fool. How are we going to open the book now? Things would be much easier in the Imperial capital. We have a few inscription masters at the Imperial College. Who can we go to now? I see. Feng Sun smacked his forehead. How could I forget him? Master Dugu is an inscription master, and I think he's about level 7. Chapter 2234. Aren't we the same? Chapter 2234. Aren't we the same? But Master Dugu has never liked you. He'll probably give you attitude if you go ask him for help. Feng Sun gave her a sympathetic look. I'll go. I don't mind the humiliation. He then picked up the book and was about to leave. Feng Wu asked, "Where are you going?" Feng Sun waved at Feng Wu. "Stay here. Master Dugu and Master Zhua are relatives by marriage, and they've always been allies. You've offended the Zhua family, and I don't think the Dugu family will like to see you. So be a good girl and stay here." Feng Wu asked, "How do you know that I can't solve these inscriptions?" "What?" Feng Sun turned around and gave her a strange look. "What did you say?" Feng Wu said, "I can solve the level 7 inscriptions." Feng Sun started laughing. "Xiao Wu, I know you're talented, but it doesn't mean that you're good at inscriptions." Feng Wu said, "I mean it." Feng Sun said, "I know that you can do formations, but you can solve level 5 formations at most, and that corresponds to level 5 inscriptions. Forget it, kiddo. This is serious business. You can brag about your ability when we have the time." Feng Wu was very angry with Feng Sun. Without another word, she grabbed the book from him. Seeing that Feng Wu really was going to give it a try, Feng Sun sighed in resignation. He winked at Xian Yi and shrugged, not taking her seriously at all. The crown prince leaned back against the cushion and didn't try to interfere. He only shook his head when Feng Wu picked up the book. Solving inscriptions required the ability to focus and calculate. The girl was too hyperactive to. Thud! Even Jun Linyuan didn't believe that Feng Wu could do it. But at that moment, she opened the book. Feng Su's eyes widened in astonishment. So did Xian Yi's. Even Jun Linyuan almost spilled his tea. "It's done," Feng Wu said casually. Feng Sun said, "You." Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. "What?" Feng Sun said, "How did you do it? Those are level 7 inscriptions." Feng Wu said matter-of-factly, "Didn't I tell you? I've known how to since I was 6. Feng Sun was rendered speechless. The others were equally silent. They had thought that she was just bragging. Feng Sun murmured, "I'm dreaming, aren't I?" Feng Wu didn't know what to say. "That's why," said Jun Linyuan after clearing his throat. "What do you mean?" Feng Sun asked curiously. Jun Linyuan said, "That's why she can enter her cultivation state as soon as she sits down." Feng Sun said, "Boss Jun, is that a joke? No one can do that." Feng Wu said, "Wait, isn't that what you do? Sit down and start cultivating right away." Chapter 2235, A Letter. Chapter 2235, A Letter. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. "Don't tell me that you can enter the cultivation state as soon as you sit down." Feng Wu looked bewildered. "Can't you?" Feng Sun said, "Of course not." Feng Wu asked, "So what is it like for you?" She suddenly realized that she hadn't been brought up the same way as everyone else. Feng Sun said, "Yes, we also sit down with our legs crossed and our eyes closed. But no one can start cultivating right away. We all need to adjust our breathing, clear our minds, and slowly get into the state. It takes an hour at least." Feng Wu said, "Is it so ceremonial for all of you?" Feng Sun said, "It's not ceremonial. It's the normal procedure. How else are you supposed to sense spiritual essence?" Feng Wu said, "But she didn't need any of that." Feng Sun asked, "Are you telling me that you don't need to do those things?" Feng Wu nodded. "Not at all." That was a hard blow to Feng Sun. He then turned to Jun Linyuan for help. The crown prince shrugged. He could enter the state pretty quickly, but it would still take him 5 minutes. He gave Feng Wu a strange look. The girl had really surprised him. This was the second time already. "Who did you learn inscriptions from?" he asked her with a brooding look in his eyes. Her past was practically blank. She lived in the imperial capital until she was 8, and then spent the next 5 years in northern border city. Where could she possibly learn inscriptions, let alone level 7 ones? All eyes were on Feng Wu. Feng Wu tried to change the subject. "Ahem. Don't you want to know what's hidden in the book?" She then opened it. 2 things fell out. They were a letter and a strange-looking black stone. Feng Wu wouldn't have opened the letter if there had been a recipient on the envelope. Since there weren't any names, she had no problems reading it. There was a strange look on her face after she finished. "What does it say?" Feng Sun wanted to have a look at the letter. Ahem. Feng Wu didn't answer. Instead, she folded the letter and put it back into the envelope. It's a girl's secret, and not suitable for boys. Feng Sun was baffled. What secret? The fact that Feng Wu wouldn't show it to him only made him more curious. Since Feng Wu had put the letter away, Feng Sun studied the black stone instead. What's this? He turned the stone this way and that, but couldn't see anything out of the ordinary about it. The stone remained unchanged. Xianyi shook his head after examining it as well. What is it? Feng Wu asked curiously. Feng Sun said, I have no idea. He wouldn't have hidden it away carefully if it was a useless thing. But what should we do with it? Things from the Dongseng Kingdom are so strange. They seem to want to hide everything in fear that other people will read into them. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. What did you just say? Feng Sun said, they don't want other people to read into them. Feng Wu smacked the table. That's it. Chapter 2236, Untitled. Chapter 2236, Untitled. Feng Sun said, Huh? Feng Wu asked, the Dongseng Kingdom, what's their specialty? Feng Sun said, inscriptions. Feng Wu said, that's right. They're good at and proud of their inscriptions. That's why they want to put inscriptions on everything to keep them secret. They think that people of the Zhenhua Empire can't solve the inscriptions. Feng Sun mumbled, we can't. Feng Wu said, too bad for them. They don't know that I'm very good at inscriptions as well. So bring it on. Feng Sun rubbed her head. I know. You can do level 7 inscriptions, and that's great. But there are higher levels. Feng Wu said proudly. But I could do them when I was 6. Feng Sun said, sure you can. But if that's the case, why are you still at level 7 now? Feng Wu said, you said that on purpose, didn't you? If her beautiful master hadn't suddenly fallen into a coma, she wouldn't have remained at the same level after so many years. Feng Sun said, when are we going to find that list? Without the list or any leads, we won't be able to solve the case. I heard that a war is going to break out in the north. Feng Wu frowned. What do you mean? Feng Sun said, my father is stationed on the northern border, and recently, his generals have been transferred to the peace grassland that's slightly to the east. Do you know where that is? It's the grassland which borders our empire and the Dongseng Kingdom. The two sides have had skirmishes in the past few years, but the battles have mostly taken place on the peace grassland. That's why the common people know little about it. Feng Wu looked perplexed. Feng Sun said, by the looks of it, the battles have been growing. The crown prince had been reading in bed. He glanced at Feng Sun when he heard that. Feng Sun immediately took the hint. That was confidential information limited to the intelligence department. He should stop talking about it. Anyway, we should find that list ASAP. I can't bring myself to think about spies among us while our soldiers fight on the front line. That's why His Majesty is so keen about this matter. Feng Wu nodded. The revival list wouldn't affect the empire so much in peaceful times. But once war broke out, the spies could do great damage if they infiltrated the armies. The revival list, Feng Wu murmured. At that moment, an image appeared on the wall. Feng Wu recognized it right away. It came from something that worked like a projector. Feng Sun and the others all jumped. What was that? How did you do it? They all looked at Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked from the stone to Feng Sun. I solved the inscriptions. That's all. Feng Sun was speechless. It seemed that if one didn't know inscriptions, they couldn't get anywhere nowadays. Wait, this person looks a lot like the leader of the Mars team. Feng Wu stared at the image on the wall. There's his profile on the right, from his name and cultivation level to the techniques he knows. Why does he think it's a good idea to carry this around? Chapter 2237, Untitled. Chapter 2237, Untitled. 10 seconds later, the image disappeared, as if it had been burned up. Burned after reading? Feng Wu cleared her throat. That's neat. Burned after reading? That's very precise. The crown prince liked the way Feng Wu put it. Feng Wu said, Isn't this stone our top priority now? Why do I feel that it contains the so-called revival list? Feng Sun asked, really? Feng Wu said, we'll know once we see more. The stone worked like a remote control. Every time she tapped it, there was a new image on the wall along with that person's profile. The descriptions were all thousands of words long, and the image scrolled down automatically. Each image only lasted for 10 seconds before it disappeared for good. Feng Sun was a very smart man, but he couldn't follow the speed after the third person. Just then, they heard footsteps outside. His Majesty the Emperor has arrived. Hearing that Jun Linyuan had fallen ill, Emperor Wu came to see him. While he was here, he was going to question Feng Wu about the revival list. However, he walked into the room only to find everyone staring at the wall. It was as if they were afraid of missing something. Both Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu kept their eyes on the wall. So did Xian Yi and even Feng Sun, who was the most active of them all. Emperor Wu lost his temper right away. He was the emperor. How could they ignore him like this? Ahem, he cleared his throat. Your Majesty, Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Although everyone greeted him, no one turned their heads. They all stared at the wall for fear of missing any bit of information. Feng Wu was the only one who spared a second to look over her shoulders and say, Your Majesty, you're here. She immediately turned back to stare at the wall. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. He was furious. He wasn't alone. Ranmil, his current favorite concubine, was with him. These people had just humiliated him. He was about to lose his temper when Feng Wu beckoned him over. Your Majesty, come here please. Emperor Wu couldn't believe his ears. What did she say? He was an emperor. No one could order him around like that. It was an insult. Before he could say anything, Feng Wu said, Your Majesty, what are you waiting for? This is the revival list of the Dongseng Kingdom. After saying that, Feng Wu went back to looking at the image on the wall. Apart from Feng Wu and her friends, a group of young eunuchs was also in front of the wall. They were all busy making notes with sweat rolling down their faces. The revival list? Emperor Wu walked up to Feng Wu. She was standing at the best angle. Emperor Wu saw the images and read the descriptions. That indeed looked like the revival list. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.